Everybody, we're getting started. Welcome to this session. I know it's late, so great to see all of you actually join us for this topic that we're going to be walking through here today. I'm Anders. I'm joined by Svetlana and Ed, and we're going to be your presenters today, walking through how to manage resources and applications at scale with AWS. Before we dive into the actual topic, how does this fit into the overall CloudOps story? Cloud operation is something we announced, I think, about a year and a half ago, which is a way of helping you, customers, to take advantage of all the infrastructure and all the things that we've done on top of AWS so that you can leverage that when you're running your business on top of AWS, making sure that you get your return of investment better, operational resilience, et cetera, et cetera. And all this gets back to, like, how do you do that when you're running on top and scale? Like, you're going to build things, you're going to build applications, resources, you're going to be deploying a lot of resources, sometimes billions of resources, depending on how big of an application you have. When you get on top of the cloud, when you go to the cloud, there's a journey you walk through. You start off with setting something up, defining what it is you want to get into play, and then you roll it out by you migrating your application from on-premise to trying to get it into play. And once it's in place, you need to operate it. You need to understand how healthy it is. Are there any security situations? Are there things I need to be aware of to do better? Maybe I need to scale it up because I got a lot of customers interacting with what I've deployed. And that actually is a very nice transition into what we will be covering. As I said, how do you manage resources and applications at scale? And we'll walk through various details of this. What have you told us? What have we heard? Why did we build this presentation, and why do we have all the technology we're going to be talking on in this session? Well, there's three big things. One is, it's really hard to find things in AWS. I can't find my resources. I don't know where the resources are. I might get an alarm and I get an identifier, but I don't know which region it is. I might not even know which account it's in. I might not have a good chance of finding out who actually I should be contacting because there is a problem, right? The second one is, we actually think more in terms of applications than individual resources, right? An individual resource, that's nice. But what we look at is the group of resources that together provide some business value that we need to run our business together on, or our business is dependent on. And how do we do that on top of AWS instead of having to focus and go and look at and do things with individual resources? And the third one is really around how do we make it easier and reduce work that our development team and our financial team and other teams need to do in order for them to be able to do their thing on top of AWS. Are there ways where we can make it simpler so that we define something once and then I can reuse it in various different places without having to go and redefine or reset up or whatever the steps I have to go through? Do you guys agree with this? Is this similar to situations you guys are sitting in? Yeah. Most of these things are pretty common, as we hear them very often with customers. So what are we going to be covering today? So we're going to walk through three major areas. One is, and if you think about them, they sort of like tackle all those three pain points in a sense. And I'll get back to those as we go through the presentation, right? We're going to cover explore. How do I find my stuff? Like, I find a resource. How do I deal it? How do I find it? How do I now organize it? I found my resources. I now want to organize them in something logical that I can deal with, that I can later on act on, which is the last topic. How do I now perform things on it? How do I operate on those aspects? We're also going to do a lot of demos throughout this session to make sure to just show you like how you do it. Demos are always nice. That actually helps you better keep it in your head and remember it when you go from here. So the other key thing I want to bring up, and this is super important, is that you're going to find there's a theme that goes through the whole presentation, and that is we love fruit. So everything we refer to as an example is going to be fruit. There's going to be bananas and apples and oranges all over the place. More as a way of keeping you guys awake, guessing what next fruit is going to be that we're going to be discussing. So we'll keep there. So with that, Svetlana, why don't you talk about how to explore?
Thank you. Thank you, Anders. So yes, let's start with explore. So how do I find my stuff? How do I find my application resources? It's very hard to organize into applications if I don't know what I have. So to help with that, we launched a new service called AWS Resource Explorer. We just launched it a few weeks ago on November 8th. AWS Resource Explorer helps customers to search for and discover relevant application resources across AWS commercial regions. So now you can find your EC2 instances, you can find your S3 buckets, you can find your DynamoDB tables across regions within the one account. You can search using free-form text, so there's not a new language you need to learn. You can also use attributes such as tags for your searches. So you can start your search leveraging AWS Resource Explorer console. Also, you can search using the unified search available across AWS Management Console. You can also leverage AWS SDK and AWS CLI command line interface to find your resources within your automation tools. AWS Resource Explorer addresses a number of key use cases that we heard from many of our customers. For example, you may want to identify which regions every resource in my application is in. So now AWS Resource Explorer can help with that because it offers cross-region search. The next one is a really big one, keeps coming up. We heard it from many customers. How do I find any untagged or mistagged resources and then tag them appropriately to meet your compliance needs? Overall recommendation is to use a tagging strategy, tag policies for your compliance needs. But as you define your strategy, as you implement your strategy, you may have some of the resources that do not comply with your standard. So you want to find them and then resolve them. Also, AWS Resource Explorer can help with potentially faster troubleshooting. You may get an email alert about a situation, and then that it would have, let's say, a resource ID. Your on-call engineer can take that resource ID and then find that resource very quickly, and then it will take you to that regional console so you can start troubleshooting. So let's go through the administrative experience of Resource Explorer. So first, the administrator with the right privileges will go in and turn on AWS Resource Explorer. In this case, we turn it on for three regions, but you can turn it on across all the regions within your account. When you enable your Resource Explorer, a local index is created within every region. And the local index is a collection of information that Resource Explorer keeps around about your resources. And it helps with faster searches. Then you would select an aggregator index. So the aggregator index stores and maintains a local copy of other indexes. And that's what enables the cross-region search. And then an administrator would create and set a default view. And that's what your end users will be searching against. For example, in this case, we set up a view where any principal within the account can search for resources within that account across regions. But you can also select other views as well. For example, you can set a view where only resource names are returned or used within the search, but tags are not used because you may want to keep that information confidential. Or maybe you want to limit the view based on resource types. Maybe you have developers in one region, and you would create a view to search for EC2 instances only within that region. Can also give it, filter it even further to say EC2 instances only within my development environment, based on some type of an environment flag. So how do I search? So you can search using plain text. In this example, we're going to use banana and orange because we all love fruit. So that query returns anything that's tagged with banana or orange, and also if you have anything that's banana and orange in your resource name, ARN. You can also search using tags. So if you want to find your application resources across region and services, here's one of the examples where you tag application is equal to banana. My second example, it shows you how to find untagged resources. So tag : none. So it will return you all the untagged resources, and you can start tagging them appropriately to meet your compliance needs. And in my last example, it's finding application resources that are incorrectly tagged or mistagged. So in this example, find anything that's not tagged with application equals to banana. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ed to actually show this in action, show a demo.
Great. Thank you very much, Svetlana. Let's walk through this. I'm going to demo two different things. I'm going to demo setting up Resource Explorer as we walk through, just so you can see how it gets set up and how you can use it. And then I'm going to demonstrate a couple of the queries as well, so you can see actually how the query language works. So I'm on console home. To find Resource Explorer, I can simply type Resource Explorer, and there it is. And this is in an account that has not yet had Resource Explorer configured. So when you are an account that hasn't had it configured, you're going to land on this splash screen that's going to explain how it works. It's going to give you some use cases, benefits, and features. You'll note that up in the upper right, there's a button or a link to basically turn on Resource Explorer. So if we go there, we have two options for how we set up Resource Explorer. We have a quick setup option, which is right here. If we do the quick setup option, the only thing we need to set is the region that we want to aggregate our results in. So that's the region where you can look at your search results across all other regions. I'm going to, for this demo, just do this in US East 1, but I want to show you the advanced setup just so that you can see what options you have. So one option you have is, by default, we'll create indexes in all your regions, but you can go in and select the regions that you want to if you don't want to create an index in every region. So that's an option for you. Another thing you can do is we cannot create an aggregator index. Perhaps you only want to search within a region. You don't want cross-region results. That's an option as well. And then when you go through the setup process, create what's called a default view, which will include all your resource types, and it'll also include the tag information. And as Svetlana said, you may not want that. So if you want to create your own custom view, that's another option available to you. We'll go back to quick setup. We'll turn on Resource Explorer, and you're going to see what happens is it starts to create these for all my regions. So they're available for me. It takes a bit of time for that index to be built, so what I'm going to quickly do is jump over to another AWS account where I've had that index already up and running. And that way then we can just run a few queries right away. I'm going to quickly just switch my region, and we'll go to Resource Explorer. So this account has had the Resource Explorer already set up. So you can see when I went to Resource Explorer, I landed right on the search page. By default, you're going to get your default view. That's the one that you set up and marked as default. In this case, it's going to search all resource types and include tags. You'll get, by default, a list of all your resources. You can filter those resources. You can filter them by region, and you can filter them by types. So real quickly here, I can get a list of just my EC2 instances. That's an option for me. But if I want to search across all my resources, I can. And let's run a couple of the queries that Svetlana walked us through. So here's banana apple. So as she said, what this is searching for is I have 11 resources that have the text banana or the text apple in either the ARN or a tag. Now I might want to be more specific than that. I might want to say, you know what, I have a tag that I use that's called application, and I just want to find the resources that are tagged, and I probably made a typo here. Let me try it again. Tag. So the tag is equal to application, and the value is banana. And I'm not. Oh, it's equal. Thank you. Haha. So here we get all my tags that are just equal to banana. I've narrowed down that search result. If I'm interested in the resources that have any value, so they have the tag key of application, but could have any value, I can actually use a wildcard. And I can see that I'm actually using that tag key for other values as well. So that's useful. Svetlana talked about the use case of tag none. So let's look at resources in this account that have no tags. So these are all the resources in this account. If I want to now, I can filter this list by type. And every link is a link into the resource. So if I want to go in and remediate that, I can. Or as we talked about, you can write automation. I'm going to do one more query, which is a little bit more advanced. I'm going to show that I can search for banana, but then I can say, find me all the resources that have the term banana either in the ARN or a tag, but take out the resources that have a tag with application equal to banana. So we'll do that, equal to banana. And I found one resource. Why would I be interested in this? Well, this could tell me, this is that mistag scenario. Like, I intended to tag my application with banana, but perhaps I made a mistake. If I click here, I can go to that resource page. In this case, it's an S3 bucket, so I land straight into S3 for this particular resource. I can scroll down and I can say, oh, look at that, you're right. I actually made a typo, and I misspelled application. So if I want to fix that, I can, and I can save that, and my index will get updated. That's an easy way to fix it. One last thing I'll show you is what I've been doing is also available for you actually from Unified Search. So everything I've done within Resource Explorer, because I have it set up, I can also do search here for banana and application, and I will get back that same 11 set right there from console home. Great. Anders, maybe back to you.
How many have used Resource Explorer? You launched it about a week or 2 weeks ago. See, one hand. You should go try it out. It's like actually pretty cool. Especially the non-tag, finding all the resources that are not tagged or being able to find things that are mistagged is one of the biggest challenges we hear from customers. The other one that keeps coming up a lot is also being able to just get an ID. I have no idea which region it is. Like, give me more information around it. You can type in the ID of the resource and we'll show you that. And we had some customers we interacted with that had cases where they weren't aware that they had resources in a certain region, and it shows up on the bill. Now you can actually proactively go in and find this a little bit earlier than when you get your bill, so you can actually clear up and like, oh, I have resources in Singapore. Why? I don't know why they're there. So let's see. There we go. So we've organized, we've gone in and we've searched for resources, made it easy to find resources based on various different criteria. Next step is now, how do we now organize them? How do we get to this? Remember the second one that talked, issue or pain point that came up? We talk about applications. We think about applications when we deal with things. Logical groups of resources gathered together that we want to do things with. There's various different ways of doing this, and I'll walk you through different technologies that exist, and so like build the story around it. The simplest way of doing it is by using tags and using tags policies. We showed some examples when we do the searches to show you how you can search for tags. Tags, simple key value pairs. Tag policies is a mechanism for you to govern how tags are being applied to ensure, an example, that if you have only certain values can apply to a specific tag key as an example. And tag policy, you can do other things. You can ensure that, enforce that you also have capitalization in a certain way, so it is easier to find things in a consistent way, getting it in play. So with tags, you get I'll call it a simple group, right? You can't do very much advanced with it. Like, you put a metadata on the resource, and now when you start querying, you can ask for, give me everything that's tagged with application equals banana as an example. You get back those resources. But anything more complex than that is really not what tags directly provide you. What tag policy does is the governance part. And I want to show an example here, where this tag policy, if you apply it, it basically says if anybody uses the key, tag key application, I'm going to allow them to use banana, orange, and apple. Those are the only three values. If somebody now tries to tag a resource, they put an application and they put in pineapple, it's going to fail. It's not going to work. One aspect that I didn't put up here as an example, a way of further enforcing policy, for enforcing using tags, is using service control policies. This is a policy for you to basically govern at the top, saying is, I need this to happen. So you can require that tags are being applied upon creation of a resource. So if you now use an SCP that says, only anytime a resource gets created, I want the tag key application to be there, and use the tag policy to say these are the 3 values, now you've pretty much locked down hard what that gets in place, and you get some order on how you actually organize your resources. So that's tags and tag policies. Next one is layer up, so tags individual metadata. Next step out is using resource groups. Oh, actually, before I go there, how many actually use tags today in anything that they're doing? I want to see all hands. I think I see all hands. That's good. What do you use them for? Is it for permissions, billing? Curious to hear.
Service catalog.
Okay.
Catalog. Yeah.
Yeah. So next step is using resource groups. So resource group is a service that allows you to also group resources, and it leverages tags as well as one of the mechanisms. And now you can create a query, basically say anything that's tagged with application equals to banana and cost center 123 as an example. All those resources that have those 2 tags end up in a resource group. And the resource group is referenceable. It has an ARN. You can tag the resource group if you want to. But you can also use this resource group across a bunch of services that understands how to deal with a logical group of resources based on a resource group. The other way of getting resources in a resource group is using a stack, CloudFormation stack. And this is where you have a stack that's been deployed. You can now go to resource groups and you point at the stack saying, I want all the resources in that stack to appear in my resource group. So now you have one construct that feeds out of 2 different mechanisms, and you can build either your own tooling around it, or you can leverage AWS services that understands the notion of a resource group. So compared to what tags is, it gives you a little bit more complexity or a little more freedom of how you define how resources should be grouped. You could do one, as I said, banana and cost center as a combination. And the benefit also is you can define the resource group once, and you can reuse it across multiple services. Getting back to, remember the 3rd bullet we talked about pain points? How do I make it easier for my teams and my environment when I'm working on it? Well, I define a resource group once, and now you can reuse it as in the DevOps use case or in other use cases as well as a way of taking advantage of what you set up. And this is a simple example of what you define a resource group, what it looks like. This basically says any resource that has the tag application equal, or project equals to banana, belong to this, this resource group. Now, tags and resource groups have existed for quite a while. And, does anybody here use resource groups today? Hand up. Why not? Didn't know about it. Okay, we can get to that later. Next step that is interesting, or the next way of organizing, and say one of the things we were talking this whole presentation about, how do I manage things at scale and how do I make it easier with applications? That is to take advantage of Service Catalog's AppRegistry. It's a service that was launched about 2 years ago. And this allows you to logically group resources based on similar criteria. You create an application, and you decide, and you basically tell it what resources are part of it. And what AppRegistry does, it takes those 2 steps we talked about before, the tagging aspect and the grouping aspect, and does it for you. It will wrap the resources in a resource group, and it will ensure that there are tags that are being published and pushed to the resources that are part of your application. And there's 3 tags. It's an application ID, there's an application name, you pick the name, and there's the ARN of the application, and this is the ARN in AppRegistry. So it is also now an object that you can put policies around, and you can put tags on the ARN of the application. So that's what it does. And so this allows you to bring it all together. Now you get consistency in tagging because everything's going to be tagged in a similar way. Application ID with an ID, and then the ID is going to be different for the different applications. So now you can create, so the way you can associate resources, I should mention as well with AppRegistry, there's 2 ways. You can either associate resources by pointing at one or more stacks. So there's no one-to-one mapping here that necessarily. You could have 100 stacks and you add those to an application. You have to go through the process of adding them in there, but once they're in there, AppRegistry does the work for you of resource group and putting the tags on the resources. But you can also add resources based on tags on resources. Right? And this could be, so a lot of you are already using tags today. So this is a way of very quickly getting them control and getting it in under the umbrella of what we call an application. Is that way you do this is you define, you decide a key, a tag key that you want to use to identify resources, how they belong to an application. And then when you create or configure your application in AppRegistry, you say, well, this is the value I want to look at on my tags, and take those resources and add those to my application. So I can both use stack and the tag key and the key mechanism as different ways of getting things in. And the reason for this is to help you as well, right? A lot of customers use CloudFormation. There are also a lot of customers that use other technologies of deploying resources. As long as you ensure that those are tagged in a way that you can consume, you can bring all those resources into AppRegistry and fold them into this application construct. The same thing here as you have with resource groups. You create an application once, and it can now be reused across a number of services that you have within, that exist within AWS. Well, that's easy for you to, I can go and create an application, I have to add the resources in it. It sounds like it's manual work. Is there any way I can do this and offload my teams and automate this as much as possible? Of course there is. One thing you can do is you can update your CloudFormation templates, and you put a little bit of code snip in it. And as part of that code snip, what it will do, it will create an application in AppRegistry, and it will register the stack that gets created out of the template as part of that application. So this is something, so now when you deploy and get your stack created, there's no need to go to AppRegistry, creating the application and all of this kind of stuff. It is done for you as part of the deployment. That's one mechanism. The second one is, we talked about tags. I'll get back to that in a little bit. Or you could use these services or these mechanisms, or you use the AWS CDK, or you can use one of the AWS solutions. There's a fair amount of them that are available for you to take advantage of. And what they will do is they will register your application with AppRegistry. Right? So it helps you not having to worry about, do I have to go to AppRegistry, do things. It will do a lot of these things for you. So this is an example of what you would put in a CloudFormation template, the code that you add in there. And you could do this, something that you would do to any template that you have if you want to go down that route, if you're using CloudFormation. So it goes in, it creates an application, puts a name to it, and then, as I said, when the stack is created, the stack is automatically added as an application, as a resource under that application. You want to use tags. I sort of walked through this real quick previously, but let me reiterate it again. What you do is you define a tag key. Example would be application that you are going to look at. And that's going to be the same tag key regardless of what application it is that you want to create. The difference is with the value you're going to be looking for. So if I go and select application as the tag key, and I create an application that I call banana, I would just going to say, well, for the tag key application, anything that's tagged with banana belongs to the banana application. So the benefit out of this is, once it's configured, now as long as resources gets tagged appropriately through whatever the mechanism is that you want to use, if it's tagged on when you create the resources or as part of deployment, the resources automatically get added in under the application without anything additional needing to happen from the developer, whoever's deploying the resources. Right? Once again, helps you with the problem of how do I make it easier for my development team and my finance team to work through things. And here,
cool. Thank you, Ed.
Ed will take over and now demo everything that I talked about.
Not quite everything. We're going to keep this to schedule. But what I want to do is, Anders talked about tagging, tag policies. He talked about resource groups. And then we talked about applications. And what I want to show is how that last construct, applications, works in a real life scenario. So I'm going to create two different applications in two different ways, so you can just see real life how it actually happens. I'm in the console. In this case, AppRegistry is actually a feature of Service Catalog that I just mentioned a moment ago. So if I go to the Service Catalog console, in there is access to this AppRegistry feature. And you can see there's a nice splash page that explains how the service works. There's a quick link to create an application. I'm going to create an application, as I mentioned, two different ways. First, I'm going to do it via tags, because we've already determined in my last demo that I'm using the tag application, and I have some values, banana. So I want to grab those resources and put them in an application. Then after that, I'll do the same thing, but I'll do it via CloudFormation in an automated way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the settings within AppRegistry, and I'm going to set a tag key. The reason I set a tag key, as Anders mentioned, is that, is that this, not banana, I've got fruit on the mind, this sets the key for this account and region. So it says, hey, I'm standardizing on this tag key application, and resources that have that tag key can now be part of an application. It also means they can't be part of another application, because we've heard clearly from customers they want governance around this. They want to know that a resource belongs to one and only one application. Once I create this, I can go in to create an application, and to do so is quite simple. I give it a name, so we'll stick with the fruit theme. We'll say that this peels bananas. When I create an application, it can actually go across multiple accounts. Oftentimes, customers will have applications that have resources in multiple accounts. I'm going to not do that in this demo and just keep it in a single account, but that is an option. Then I associate resources to the application, and we talked about doing it via CloudFormation, but here you can see I can also do it via tag. So by simply entering the value of my tag, it now goes out and it says, hey, I found a couple resources. Those are now going to be included in the application. When I use AppRegistry, I not only associate resources to the application, but I can also associate metadata to the application. And this is we call these attribute groups, and you can have these predefined. So I've predefined a set of metadata that defines the characteristics of this application. I've said it's customer-facing, and it's a critical application for our business. Based on that, I just press create, and you can see here that it's going to go through and it's going to create the application. Not only does it create the application, but it actually also creates a resource group. The reason we do that, the resource group is what collects together all the resources for this application, and we did this automatically. You can see now that this application, here's my resources that are there. You can see also that I have this metadata available for my application. And if I click through to it, you can actually see what it contains, which is just some information about this application, the type of application, the criticality, and perhaps the team that owns it. But you can define that and set that up in terms of how you want to manage your applications. That's one way to build an application. I want to walk through one other way. And Anders talked about the idea that you can do it via CloudFormation and through CloudFormation resources. And he also mentioned that AWS Solutions and when you deploy an AWS solution, many of those solutions now automatically create an application for you. And they do that via the CloudFormation technology. So just to show exactly what this can look like, and I'm going to do it through a solution, but this could be your own stack as well. This is a distributed load testing solution on AWS. And here's the solution page. It explains how it works and what the architecture is. If I click just to launch this solution in my console, it's going to take me into the CloudFormation console. I haven't done anything yet in regards to an application, but it tells me, hey, you already have a template. It's going to ask me for some details to provision it, so I'll call it, my load testing. I'll break from the fruit theme here for a second. It asks me for a little bit of information in terms of my email address, but aside from that, that's all I need to enter, and click next, and next, and acknowledge, and provision. And when we create this application, you can see how it's being created for me. And as it starts to create the resources here, there they go, I can actually look, and they're the resources that are actually being created. You can see that the application is actually already being created for me. And that happened automatically just as a result of the CloudFormation template. Once the application is complete, being created, and it takes a second for this to be done, but then I can go back into AppRegistry. Let's see if it's already there. And there it is. So this is the application that I created. It happened automatically through that CloudFormation stack. If I click into the application, you can see there is the CloudFormation stack. There's the resource group that get automatically created, which is going to help me manage it. And I'm going to walk through that in my next demo. And also, here's some interesting metadata. So with the AWS Solutions team, every solution that gets created is typed, named, and versioned. So all of that's available for you now, and it's associated to that whole collection of resources that get created for the solution. So it's a really nice way of managing at scale the resources that you're creating on AWS. And I think with that, I'm going to pass back to you, Anders. Let's see. Did it switch back?
Yep. Okay. We're good. So how many knew about AppRegistry before this? See one hand. Now everybody knows. Everybody's an expert. Everybody's going to go home and use it. You should be flipping up your laptops and deploying it now and testing it out. So. No, but as I said, if you think about it, it's a really useful tool. It makes life much easier for you because now if it goes in and it structures, ensures the tags are consistently applied. These are also system tags, which has an inventory property of that your users can't change them. They're only controlled through AWS services, which gives a lot of benefit with regards to nobody can go muck around or add their own tags that magically adds it in there. But the system tags with the application ID and application name is something that is you can be taken advantage of. Okay, so we started with Explore, finding our stuff. We could find things that were not tagged. Once we find all these pieces, we went in and organized them. You could use different ways of doing it, either with tags. You can use resource groups. AppRegistry is probably the preferable one because it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So you should definitely go back and look at it once we're done with the presentation. Now what can we do with this stuff? How do we act on it? We've gone in and grouped them. We've got to do things with it. So let's walk through the same way. We started with tags, and we're going to get further up the chain of how you can do things. So if you've used tags, and everybody raised their hand when I asked the question previously, there's 3 use cases that normally comes up with regards to tags, what you can do. Like one is around cost management, one is around permissions, and one is around operations and support. And if we walk through them one by one, like the cost management aspect, this is cost allocation tags. Most people know about them. You have to enable them, but once they're enabled, you can now get your cost and usage broken out by tags. You can also set budgets based on tags. It's not just getting the usage. You can control and get alarms based on where you're at with your budgets, et cetera. And the other one that I put up here as an example is also anomaly detection from a billing perspective, like maybe suddenly my cost is going up higher than it normally does. I'll get a notification about it if I've set it up. And this is where like you have to go in, and if you see here, these are the tags, the tag keys, I should say, that you go and enable for cost allocation that are related to AppRegistry that put on the resources, right? Permissions. If you want to control permissions, this is attributes-based access control, industry terms. It allows you to go in and define permissions based on the tags on the resource, and you can also take advantage of tags on the principal and use that as a way of matching and saying as how control gets applied depending on which group they're in and what they're trying to do with the resource. And it allows you to simplify your policy a lot because you don't have to go and specify a service, you don't have to specify the resource type unless you specifically want to do so. But it gives you a little bit of more simplicity of how you actually control and put the policy in place. And I'll show an example of that in a little bit in a slide to come. The last one is a way of getting more context on the resources so that if there is something that's happened, you can do things with it. Like, let's say there's an alarm that fires and what you get is the resource ID, right? Well, if you get the resource ID, you can ask for the tags on it, and maybe there's a contact information on it, or maybe it's other ways of doing it. Another way of getting contact information would be using attribute groups associated with the application. The other benefit of having the tag information with the application ID and application name, let's say there's an alarm that fires and you know the resource, you can now know which application that resource is part of. So you know which application in your world that is being impacted, not just the individual resource. Those are key things. If we look at the policy that I wanted to walk through, there are other sessions that walk through much deeper in how you deal with permissions in the IAM space. But I really want to bring this up because it actually shows the power of using tags. So what this policy states, basically saying is, allow any action on any resource from any service as long as it has a resource tag, which is service catalog, the application name equals to banana, and the tag on the principal is team equals to fruit salad. Right? So now whenever a new resource gets added, I don't have to change the policy, right? It just automatically gets access in here. Another way of being control, if you want to control it in a slightly different way, but you get a similar result, is really saying is, I want to have any resource and any action service, I want to make sure that they can get access as long as the application name is equal to the team name. Now I don't even have to specify banana in the policy. I just basically say that application name, colon, and then I put the principal tag team on the right-hand side. So now anybody in the banana team gets access to the banana resources, and anybody in the orange team gets access to the orange resources. And you can use the same policy across all of these different teams and resources. Very, very powerful. So, anybody using this today? Yeah. I see people nodding a little bit. So, you should definitely take an advantage and look at it. It's really powerful. So this was taking action on resources. Now, if we go up the layer, we talked about you grouping them based on resource groups. And there's several services today that allows you to point at a resource group and basically say, perform actions on that thing and all the resources in it. An example here is like systems manager, and there's flavors of system manager like incident manager, and there's patch manager, et cetera, et cetera. And you can go into those individual services and select things. I want to do my stuff on that resource group, and it will iterate through the resources and do whatever it is that you've defined as part of it. Example is patch manager, where you're going to patch the instances that are part of a resource group. So instead of doing it individually, you can put it in a resource group. Now you've got the benefit out of it, which means, given that we say resource group, given that AppRegistry envelopes all the resources in the resource group, you can point at that resource group. Big advantage. Same thing with CloudWatch. You can go in and build a dashboard by pointing at a resource group as a way of monitoring what the health is. And same thing here, you can point at a resource group and take advantage of what you've done there. And it's sort of like just a simple clip of what it would look like. Usually the resources or the services will give you options of what you can select, different ways of grouping it. The benefit of using resource groups is it's like a exchange where you can have different technologies that allows you to have the resources in that group, and the service just understands it and take advantage of it. And here I'm basically saying, pick the resource group that's called application banana, and that is the resource group name that AppRegistry will create, just to show taking advantage once again of what AppRegistry produces for you. Okay, we did tags, we did resource groups. Is there a better way? Is there a better experience you can have around this? And now we get to the applications that are registered that you created in AppRegistry. And there are services, multiple services you can see up here. And this is something that will continue to grow over time, where we're going to add more and more services in here that will fully understand this concept of an application that we've created. So CloudWatch Application Insights, Resilience Hub, well-architected, Service Management Connector. This is to connect into ServiceNow, the application that you defined, and Application Manager. All services where they will list the applications that you have created in AppRegistry, so you can select from there, right? And this, once again, gets back to this whole, like, how do you make it simpler so I only have to define something once, and I can reuse it depending on what my job is? Well, this is where you take that advantage of making it life easier for your teams. This is just a simple clip of what it looks like when you select it. This only has banana. I should probably have more examples here, but you basically get an experience of what it looks like. You can also, in all of these services, I think it's all of these services, but most of them, you can also create an application. It will create it in AppRegistry. So if you've used if the service allows you to pick a resource group as an example, you can click Create Application, and it will create the application and include those resources into an application in AppRegistry. So I didn't talk about Application Manager. I want to have a separate slide to go through that, because this is the hub for you to manage and operate your applications on AWS. This should be your starting point. What Application Manager does is pulls together a lot of pieces. It pulls together ways of pulling in resources depending on how they are being grouped, like applications in AppRegistry, resource groups. You can point at a stack. You can point at things that have been deployed through Launch Wizard. Even EKS clusters is another technology that's part of this that can be imported in and monitored and looked at. And once you've gotten these constructs in, or you basically selected what you want to look at them, it allows you to do a lot of different things. It brings together a lot of information from CloudWatch, such as alarms and logs, It allows you to look at how you're doing with AWS config and config rules. Are you compliant with the rules that have been set up in your environment? The CloudTrail logs, information that comes out of the logs so you can see what events have been registered for your application. And etc. And the last one I brought on there also says Cloud Cost Explorer. So it will start surfacing your cost based on your application. So it is truly a hub where you should be working and looking and monitoring and working on doing a lot of your work around from an application perspective. The last part is, so you import resources, you can go and investigate to understand like what's the health, how is it doing, is it rolling along, is it healthy? And once, if you find things you want to do, the next step would be you need to remediate it, you need to poke at it. And this is where things such as like Patch Manager that I talked about previously also will help out and get those resources in place, the fixes in place. So with that, I think it's time for the next demo.
Yes, thank you, Anders. Okay, for the next demo, what I'm going to focus on is demonstrating primarily Application Manager, because I think as Anders talked about, that's where we're really able to pull it all together. And I can walk you through some of the management functions that you can do in Application Manager. Application Manager, one of its inputs is the AppRegistry, which we've already fed into. So we're going to be able to look at our applications and pull them up in that tool. I'm on the console homepage, and the reason I'm starting, well, I've started every demo there, but one of the things we've just recently launched is actually an applications widget right on the homepage of AWS. So we're kind of getting into this notion that you should be able to get to your application from wherever you are on AWS and have a one-click away. So we've actually got that now. You can see here's the banana application, here's that load testing application. For this demo, I'm going to use a different application it's been running for a bit. It has a bit more interesting aspects to it, which are going to make it easier for me to demo. So we're going to click into that. With one click, I now go into Application Manager, which is a capability of Systems Manager, as you can see here in the chain. And when you come into Application Manager, you get a single dashboard of your application. Let's just walk through it. In the left-hand pane, we get what are the components that sit in this application. This particular application was provisioned via a CloudFormation stack. So there's actually 8 CloudFormation stacks that came together to build this application. One stack deploys the compute, another stack deploys the storage, another stack deploys our database. So all of those are deployed, and then we have additional stacks that are actually deploying config rules. Right here, you can see that we can see what alarms, CloudWatch alarms, are in place for these applications. These are alarms that are actually included in the application and associated to the resource. So as Anders talked about, how can I connect my alarms to my applications? This is something that Application Manager is helping us do. So we can see that I have 7 alarms that are in alarm, 2 for my database, 2 for my compute, and 2 for my file storage. And I can see a summary of those here in terms of, I also have 11 that are actually in a fine state. If I click into a stack, this will render for just that one stack, and I can actually click into those alarms. One of the tools, this is what we're doing with applications, is pulling together multiple AWS services and with App Manager. So you can see as I look into the compute stack, I can see that there is a set of alarms that have actually been created and determined by Application Insights. So prior to launching this app, I told Application Insights, look at this application and determine how to monitor it using AI/ML. So it's built a couple of alarms, and it says, you should take a look at those. Those are low severity, but they're potential issues. And then down here are the alarms that I've actually created as part of the app. I define these. If I want to actually look at them, I can actually click on them, and that'll take me straight into CloudWatch, right into that alarm. So now I can do my investigation, my troubleshooting. It's all right there, 2 clicks away from my application. So that's super powerful. If I come back into this application, I want to show a couple other aspects that we can look at. So another key thing we have is I want to understand how much my application costs. And so we have a summary of costs right on the homepage of App Manager. You can see I provisioned this in November, so we don't have any costs in September and October. But so far, it's cost me $7.96 in November. This is just for the resources in this application. So only those resources are contributing to this calculation of cost. Further down, I can actually look at compliance of the application. So this will tell me for the config rules that I have defined in this AWS account where this application is running, looking just at the resources that are in this application, which ones are compliant and which ones aren't compliant. So you can see I have 5 resources that are non-compliant, 11 that are compliant, and a few that I don't yet have enough data. If I want to look at all my compliance rules, I can do that. I can look at all 11 rules that I have in place. And for each rule, it'll tell me how many resources are fine and how many resources have an issue. And actually, if there's a remediation action set up, it'll actually list the remediation action as well. And if I want to take more action on this, it's one click away for me to go to AWS config and work on my remediation. The last thing I want to show with App Manager is the ability to drill into individual resources. So Anders talked about this idea of how do I collect together my resources into one place. So these are just the resources. I've got 32 resources in this application. And it's super easy now for me to find. Let's say I want to find an EC2 instance. I can find that instance right there. This is the EC2 instance that's running, that's powering this application. When I look at that instance, I can actually also take action on it. So App Manager integrates with runbooks, SSM runbooks, and I can right here with one click look at a set of runbooks that are applicable to this. And if I wanted to, for instance, to restart this instance, it's one click away, and I could actually execute that runbook here and restart the instance. So that's available to me right there from within App Manager. Anders mentioned a couple other services that are integrated as well with applications. This is App Manager. We mentioned well-architected, so you can now perform. If I go to well-architected, let me just show you that. I won't be able to, I don't have the time to do a full demonstration of it, but just to show you, when you go into well-architected, for those of you who use the well-architected service, you can now connect your well-architected analysis to an application. So down here, we have the ability right here to actually select the application that I've created, and now you've connected that analysis back to that application. One other tool I'll just show you really quick, just so you get a sense, is Resilience Hub. So you might want to analyze the resilience of your application and understand, how you can improve that resilience, which is what Resilience Hub enables you to do. Resilience Hub also has the ability to grab an AppRegistry application and go ahead and just drop that in and then do a resilience analysis on it. So all those services are plugged into this one library of your applications. And I think with that, I'll pass it back to you. Bingo.
That's double click every time. Thank you, Ed.
Yep.
How many use Application Manager? Anybody uses it today? This is a very quiet crowd. Oh, one person. So let's start a recap and go through what actually did we walk through to give you a little bit of a flavor of things that are going on. We started with exploring, how do you find your stuff? Then we talked about how do you organize it, and then later on we talked about acting on it. So what we're trying to paint a picture around is that you can pick a little bit the choice of is on your side of how do I get my resources created? How do I deploy them? Right, you could use CloudFormation, you could use Proton that uses CloudFormation under the covers as an example. You could use the CDK, et cetera. Launch Wizard, maybe you have other technologies that deploy resources and get them out, get them deployed into your account. Once they're in place, now you have basically resources grouped in various different ways. You have them with stacks. If you ensure that they're tagged as well, we talked about tags and tag policies as a way of governing and making sure that tags get appropriately put into place. If you take advantage of AppRegistry, it will do a lot of simplifying a lot of stuff for you. It will put a resource group around all the resources so that you have something you can reference, and it will ensure that there are tags placed on the resources that are part of the application as well, so that you later on can take advantage of the ecosystem of services that we have that actually can act on a group of resources. We showed some services, demoed some services that already understands the concept of an application. You'll probably see more coming in the future as well. We're going to keep adding more and more into this so that once your application is created and registered in AppRegistry, other services will pick it up and you just pick that application banana or orange, whatever it is that you call them. So what should you take away from this? One, this is like super important, like define and publish a tagging schema. Hopefully you already done this, because everybody raised their hand and said they're using tags. You probably have some sort of idea what your tagging schema should be. You should definitely look at tag policies. You should look at what you can take advantage of with SCPs. I have a blog that I'm going to show a link to later on that you should read about, that talks about how to use SCPs, et cetera, to basically govern and control tags creation and tags on resources. But get into defining your tagging schema, put it in place. Use Resource Explorer as a way of identifying where there's mismatch. You probably already have a lot of resources deployed that you might have tags. Find resources that are not meeting your standard. Take advantage of Resource Explorer. Use AppRegistry as a way of doing this organization, as that it takes away a lot of the pain from you of having to try to figure out how to group it. If you use AppRegistry, as you see, there's a lot of things and benefits that comes out of it at the other end that you can take advantage of, and it does a lot of the groundwork for you when you're working. The last thing I put up here is automate, automate, automate. And that is more around, if you think about what we were walking through, well, how can I automate application creation? Well, update your templates, put it in there, some script in there, so it automatically registers your application. Use tags. If you're using tags for your resources, build it into your applications as well. Take advantage of that. So now when resources get created and they're tagged appropriately, resources will automatically end up in there. Now you're taking away the human person in between that might do something wrong. You're taking away those pieces. Automate just helps getting things moving much more efficient. So here's some good links to some good documentation to look at. The top one talks about tagging best practices. And I think it was just recently updated as well, so you definitely should look at that and take advantage of that. The second one is the blog I talked about. It talks about how you set up a tagging strategy using tag policies and SCPs that we discussed as a way of controlling tags getting put on resources. And the last one really goes into more details about how AppRegistry and Application Manager together actually gets this environment ready for you and how you can really take advantage of monitoring and managing your world through Application Manager. Last pieces, we're running towards the end. I think I'm seeing there's 2 minutes left. Please fill out the survey, any feedback, how we can improve more data you would like to see, get it in there. Tomorrow, I don't think the expo is open this late, but tomorrow you can always go to the expo, go to the cloud operations kiosk, ask them any question you want. They'll be able to answer them and help you out in more detail. There are more events, more sessions that are related to cloud operations. That blog that's up there should list all of those sessions that you should go and take advantage of and learn more about things. With that, we say thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it this late hour of the day. Go and enjoy the rest of the evening. If you have questions, please come up. I'm not going to take questions this way. You can come up to the podium and we'll take questions here and talk about it. So thank you so much for showing up. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.